On a cold December morning in 2012, the residents of the affluent Riverstone Estates woke up to the shocking news of a brutal murder. Robert Chamberlain, a self-made millionaire, was found dead in his lavish home, his body riddled with stab wounds. What seemed like a break-in gone wrong would soon unravel into a sordid tale of forbidden love, jealousy, and betrayal that shattered a family and stunned the community. Robert Chamberlain, at 45, was the epitome of success. He had built a thriving business empire from the ground up, earning respect and admiration from everyone who knew him. With his striking looks, charismatic personality, and philanthropic endeavors, Robert appeared to have it all. He lived in a sprawling mansion with his wife, Lisa Chamberlain, a former model who had dedicated herself to charity work and raising their two teenage children, Emily and James. The Chamberlains were the perfect family, or so it seemed, but beneath the surface, Robert harbored a dark secret that would eventually lead to his untimely death. His obsession with his sister-in-law, Natalie Pierce, had begun innocently enough, but it had grown into a dangerous infatuation that neither of them could control. Natalie, Lisa's younger sister, was the complete opposite of her sibling. Where Lisa was elegant and reserved, Natalie was vibrant and spontaneous. At 32, she was still single, having never found the right person to settle down with. She had moved in with the Chamberlains temporarily after a bad breakup, but what was meant to be a short stay turned into something much more complicated. Robert found himself drawn to Natalie in a way he had never felt before. Her carefree attitude and infectious energy were a stark contrast to the routine life he had grown accustomed to. The two began spending more time together, long walks in the park, late-night conversations over wine, and eventually, secret rendezvous when Lisa was out of town for her charity work. Natalie was flattered by Robert's attention. She had always admired him from afar, and his advances made her feel special. But as their relationship grew more intense, she started to feel conflicted. She loved her sister dearly and knew that what she was doing was wrong. Yet, she couldn't bring herself to end the affair. Robert, too, was torn between his desire for Natalie and his loyalty to his wife. The situation reached a boiling point in November 2012, when Lisa confronted Robert about his growing closeness with her sister. She had noticed the stolen glances, the hushed conversations, and the way Robert's demeanor changed whenever Natalie was around. Lisa demanded that Natalie leave their home, but Robert, desperate to keep Natalie close, convinced his wife that it was just a phase, and that he and Natalie were only friends. Reluctantly, Lisa agreed, but she kept a watchful eye on them. The tension in the household was palpable, and Robert's once idyllic life was now hanging by a thread. He knew he had to make a choice, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. On the night of December 15th, 2012, everything came crashing down. The Chamberlains had hosted a lavish holiday party at their mansion, attended by business associates, friends, and family. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, but it ended in tragedy. After the guests had left and the children had gone to bed, Robert and Natalie found themselves alone in the kitchen. Their secret affair, fueled by passion and forbidden desire, had reached a dangerous peak. They argued heatedly about their future, with Natalie demanding that Robert leave his wife for her. Robert, torn between his love for Natalie and his duty to his family, refused. In a fit of rage, Natalie threatened to tell Lisa everything if Robert didn't leave her. She couldn't bear being the other woman any longer. The argument escalated, and in a moment of blind fury, Natalie grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed Robert repeatedly. The shock and horror of what she had done left her paralyzed as Robert collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. Realizing the gravity of her actions, Natalie fled the scene, leaving Robert to bleed out on the cold marble floor. She drove away in a daze, her mind racing with fear and regret. She knew there was no turning back now. The man she loved was dead, and she was the one who had killed him. Lisa, who had been upstairs, heard the commotion and rushed down to find her husband lying in a pool of blood. Her screams echoed through the empty halls as she frantically called 911. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. Robert Chamberlain was pronounced dead at the scene. The police arrived soon after and began their investigation. The house was cordoned off, and the crime scene was meticulously examined. At first, it seemed like a robbery gone wrong, but there were no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be missing. Detective Mark Reynolds, a seasoned investigator with a reputation for solving high-profile cases, was assigned to the case. He quickly realized that this was no random act of violence. There was something more sinister at play, and he was determined to uncover the truth. As the investigation unfolded, Detective Reynolds discovered the tangled web of lies and deceit that had led to Robert Chamberlain's murder. The trail of evidence pointed to someone close to him, someone who had both the motive and the opportunity to commit the crime. And so began the unraveling of a love triangle that would shock the community and destroy a family. Detective Mark Reynolds wasted no time in getting to work. He knew that every minute was crucial in a murder investigation. His first step was to thoroughly examine the crime scene. Robert's body had been found in the kitchen, a pool of blood surrounding him, with multiple stab wounds to his chest and abdomen. The scene was brutal, suggesting a crime of passion rather than a calculated killing. Reynolds quickly ruled out a robbery gone wrong. There were no signs of forced entry, and nothing valuable had been taken from the house. This indicated that the killer was someone Robert knew and trusted, someone who could enter the house without raising suspicion. As he surveyed the scene, Detective Reynolds noticed something peculiar. There were traces of blood leading away from the kitchen, down the hallway, and out the back door. It was as if the killer had fled in a hurry, too panicked to clean up after themselves. This was a critical clue. It meant the killer might have injured themselves during the attack, leaving behind a trail that could lead straight to them. The next step was to interview Lisa Chamberlain. She was still in shock, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. She sat at the dining room table, clutching a tissue, as Reynolds gently questioned her about the events of the night. "I was upstairs when I heard the commotion," Lisa said, her voice trembling. "I thought it was just Robert and Natalie arguing again. They've been fighting a lot lately. I came down as quickly as I could, but when I saw him, I couldn't believe it." Reynolds pressed her gently for more details. "You mentioned arguments. What were they about?" Lisa hesitated, looking down at her hands. I think they were having an affair. I confronted Robert about it a few weeks ago, but he denied everything. I knew something was going on, but I never thought it would end like this." Reynolds took note of Lisa's statement. An affair would certainly provide a motive for a crime of passion, but Lisa's demeanor didn't suggest that she was involved. She seemed genuinely devastated by her husband's death. Next, Reynolds turned his attention to Natalie Pierce. She had disappeared after the murder, and this raised red flags. It wasn't long before his team tracked her down at a nearby motel. She was a mess, disheveled, her eyes puffy from crying, and her hands shaking uncontrollably to the station. Reynolds began questioning Natalie. She was visibly distressed, her voice cracking as she spoke. "I didn't mean to do it. I swear, I didn't mean to kill him." Reynolds leaned forward, his tone calm but firm. "Natalie, I need you to tell me exactly what happened." Through sobs and gasps for breath, Natalie recounted the events of that fateful night. She described how she and Robert had argued, how she had begged him to leave Lisa and be with her. "He said he couldn't do it," she whispered. "He said he loved me, but he couldn't leave his family. I snapped. I grabbed the knife, and before I knew it, he was on the floor. I didn't mean to kill him." Reynolds listened carefully, noting every detail. Natalie's confession was damning, but he needed more evidence to corroborate her story. The traces of blood leading out of the house matched her account of fleeing the scene in a panic. But there was one more piece of the puzzle missing. The murder weapon, the knife used in the attack, had not been found at the scene. Reynolds suspected that Natalie had taken it with her when she fled, but there was no sign of it in her possession. He ordered a search of the area around the motel where Natalie had been hiding. After several hours of searching, the team found the knife in a trash bin behind the motel. It was covered in blood and matched the description of the one missing from the Chamberlain kitchen. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the blood on the knife belonged to Robert Chamberlain. With the weapon in hand and Natalie's confession, Reynolds felt confident they had their killer. But there was still a lingering doubt in his mind. Something didn't quite add up. He decided to dig deeper into the nature of Robert and Natalie's relationship. As he reviewed their phone records and text messages, a disturbing pattern emerged. It appeared that their relationship had been more tumultuous than anyone had realized. The messages revealed a series of heated arguments, threats, and desperate pleas from Natalie for Robert to leave his wife. But one particular message caught Reynolds' attention. It was from Robert, sent just hours before his death. "We need to talk. I'm ending this tonight." It seemed that Robert had decided to end the affair for good. If that was the case, it could explain why Natalie snapped. But it also raised another question. Was she acting alone, or had she been pushed to the brink by someone else? Reynolds knew that this case wasn't as open and shut as it seemed. He needed to be sure that Natalie was the only one responsible for Robert's death. And to do that, he would need to dig even deeper into the tangled web of lies and deceit that had ensnared the Chamberlain family. Detective Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Natalie's confession, while emotional, seemed too straightforward for a crime so complex. As he pored over the evidence, something in Robert's final message nagged at him. "I'm ending this tonight." What exactly was he planning to end? Reynolds decided to take a closer look at Lisa Chamberlain. Although she appeared to be the grieving widow, something about her calm demeanor in the aftermath of such a brutal crime was unsettling. He revisited the security footage from the Chamberlain residence, this time focusing on the hours leading up to the murder. What he found changed everything. In the footage, Robert could be seen arguing with Lisa in the kitchen just an hour before his death. They were too far away to hear, but their body language spoke volumes. Robert was animated, pointing toward the stairs, while Lisa remained stone-faced, her arms crossed. At one point, she walked away, and moments later, Robert began texting on his phone. The same message he sent to Natalie. Reynolds felt a cold chill. He knew he was onto something. Why had Lisa lied about not knowing anything that night? What else was she hiding? The breakthrough came when he pulled Lisa's phone records. To his surprise, there were several calls between Lisa and Natalie in the days leading up to the murder. Most of the calls lasted only a few minutes, but one, on the morning of the murder, was over 20 minutes long. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was premeditation. Reynolds brought Natalie back in for questioning. This time, he confronted her with the new evidence. "You've been in contact with Lisa multiple times before the murder," he said, sliding the phone records across the table. "What were you talking about?" Natalie's face went pale. She called me," she stammered. "She said Robert was going to leave her, that he was planning to end everything, to kick her out, take the kids, everything. She was desperate." Reynolds leaned in. "And what did she ask you to do, Natalie?" Tears welled up in Natalie's eyes. "She said we had to stop him. She wanted me to convince him to stay. But when I tried, he said it was over. He said he was done with both of us." Her voice broke as she continued. "She told me to make sure he wouldn't leave. I didn't know what she meant at the time, but when we argued, I just lost control." Reynolds felt a surge of anger. Lisa had manipulated Natalie, pushing her fragile emotions to the brink. She had used Natalie as a pawn, knowing that her jealousy and desperation would lead her to do something drastic. With this new information, Reynolds confronted Lisa. She denied everything at first, but as he laid out the evidence, the phone calls, the argument on the footage, and Natalie's confession, her facade crumbled. "I only wanted to scare him," Lisa whispered, her eyes cold. "I wanted him to realize what he would lose if he left me. I never thought she would actually do it. I didn't want him dead. I just wanted my life back." Her words hung in the air, a chilling admission that, while not directly responsible, she had set the deadly events into motion. She had manipulated her sister, pushed her into a corner, and watched as the inevitable unfolded. Natalie was charged with second-degree murder, but Lisa wasn't free from consequences. She was charged as an accessory to murder, having incited and manipulated Natalie into committing the crime. The trial trial was a media sensation, exposing the twisted dynamics of the Chamberlain family. In the end, Natalie was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Lisa received a 10-year sentence for her role in the crime. The once idyllic family was destroyed, and the luxurious mansion that had been their home stood empty, a haunting reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. What began as a forbidden affair ended in murder, leaving a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams in its wake.